Russia nowadays is making a lot of the fact that it won the war and that its contribution should not be neglected, as it often is in Hollywood, for example, and using that as a narrative also for its justification for its current policies, particularly, of course, when it talks about de-Nazifying Ukraine.
It's VE Day in the UK, but not in Russia. Their Victory Day comes tomorrow, and the guest of honour will be China's Xi Jinping. He's in Moscow for a 4-day visit. Richard Spencer is the Times China correspondent in Beijing and joins us now. Good morning.
Morning.
Why does this day mean so much in Russia? Well, it means so much.
In Russia, it means a huge amount because, Russia... Oh, the Soviet Union, we should always be careful to say that. The Soviet Union lost more people in the Second World War than any other country. I mean, its losses really dwarf that of any country other than China, in fact. I think between 20 and 25 million Soviet citizens died. Obviously, many of them soldiers. They really used mass wave tactics in the Second World War, the Soviets. But of course, huge numbers of Soviet citizens also in those incredibly bitter wars, often conducted in the middle of winter, starvation tactics being used by both sides and so on. So Russia nowadays is making a lot of the fact that it won the war and that its contribution should not be neglected, as it often is in Hollywood, for example, and using that as a narrative also for its justification for its current policies, particularly, of course, when it talks about de-Nazifying Ukraine.
Yeah, and let's talk about Russia's current kind of pursuit of political allies, because Vladimir Putin very much laying out the red carpet here. How big of a moment should we see this visit from Xi Jinping as?
I mean, we know that Xi Jinping and Putin are close, and they've got closer in recent years, particularly since the Ukraine war started, when China stepped up and said, we're not going to abandon you. We see they don't particularly like the war in Ukraine, China, but they see the greater danger as American hegemonism, as both sides call it. They have to stand together against America throwing its weight around the world in what they see as their backyard. So that's a very important, long-standing issue. I think this is a particularly interesting sort of version of that friendship, a particularly interesting meeting, because it does go to this point about history guiding a way to the future. China is another country which feels that its suffering in the Second World War has been overlooked. It lost 20 million people in what was basically a war against Japan, as far as China is concerned, but is obviously still part of the Greater World War. And this is partly its own doing, because it always wanted to stress the anniversary of the Civil War, the liberation, as it puts it, of China by the Communist Party in 1949, the World War, where it was sort of humiliated by Japan until America came to the rescue, is a much more difficult issue. It's also difficult because it wasn't the Communist Party in power at the time. The Communist Party didn't play a huge role in the Second World War. But in the last 10 years, they've really ramped up this memorial of the war, the anniversaries of the war. They had a massive military parade 10 years ago. They're going to have another parade later this year, because they want to show that solidarity with Russia, and also say, look, we too are a World War II winning power. We deserve to be taken seriously. And in particular, at the moment, it doesn't like the institutions that were set up after the Second World War, like the United Nations, being knocked by America, particularly with Trump saying, it's America that's the world leader, not any other country, and certainly not any multilateral institution like the United Nations.
Yeah, it's such an interesting...
China feels that its role in the war gives it a stake in the international order that America shouldn't be ignoring.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's such an interesting point, especially as we talk about that UK-US trade deal today. Richard, thanks very much. And you can read Richard's copy in The Times, of course. He is The Times China correspondent.
And it's a reminder why China and Russia are in the Security Council of the United Nations, because it's the victorious nations of World War II make up the Security Council, which is why it's that odd thing that Germany isn't in the Security Council, but Russia is. And from where it causes all sorts of problems. For the United Nations.
стен Академии высшей старшего поколения. Эффективный с высоким качеством.